Hi there, welcome to today's painting tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how you can paint a polar bear with acrylic paints. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a small round brush and I'm going to put in the black of the eye. So just take a really small amount of black and put that in the center of the eye. And then I'm going to go around the outside. This eye is very small, so you want to use the smallest round brush that you can find. I'm going to take some of this dark brown and add a little bit of that along the top. And then I'm going to pick up this yellow ochre and then carefully put that in. I'm going to add a little more paint. And then you can pick up a small amount of the white and add a bit of a highlight in there. It's really light. Okay, so around the eye, let's put some burnt umber and go around that eye. And then we want to have an eyelid at the top. Let's take some of this blue gray and some of this mid-tone gray and then mix some white in there so we have a light gray. And then see if you can carefully pop an eyelid up there. I'm going to grab a little bit more white and try to bring that out. We can do that same thing on the bottom. Make an eyelid underneath. And then pick up some black paint and see if you can continue around that eye. We have sort of a wing shape coming out at the corners. This tiny little brush you can use to get really nice detail. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to a size 1 dome brush. I'm going to take this light gray color that we mixed up and let's maybe mix a little bit more of a mid-tone gray, a bit lighter. And then let's bring that around the eye. I'm doing it while the paint is still a little bit wet so we can get some blending in there. And we can get a bit of a natural look. Okay, and then let's take some darker gray and go around that eye with the darker color. That's going to create a nice shadow. I'm going to bring it down this way. And then that's a nice shadow for the eye. Okay, you could take some white paint, come along the top here, and then create this section while it's still wet so everything is blending nicely. If you wanted to add a little bit of this blue in here, you can do that for the shadow, just to add some interest and a little bit more color variety. Okay, so now let's look at the nose. And we want a small brush for that too. I'm going to use this size 0 round brush. And let's put in the black first. So I'm going to go along the bridge of the nose and put a little bit of curved shape for the nose there. And then go around the outside edge. While that's still wet, pick up some of this blue and then put the blue in there. Allow it to mix with the black. And then pick up a small amount of white for a highlight right in that center. You can bring it down. Okay, and then blend that in as well. Let's actually take some of this blue and then bring it down in the middle of that nose. because then I want to take some black and put the black color in where the nostrils are. It's going to be the darkest value. And then I'm going to bring it back along this edge. Okay, I'm going to rinse off the brush. Let's grab some of this blue and then put some of that blue in here where we left the paper white. And then I'm going to come up and bring this color into the mouth area. Follow along with that sketch. I'm going to add another layer and then pick up the bluish gray and go underneath the mouth with this bluish gray paint. Okay, I'm going to switch to that one dome brush and I'm going to pick up some beige and a little bit of the brown as well and start building this section under the chin. I'm going to use the brown as our shadow. And then to get lighter, I'm going to pick up that beige. And then to get even lighter, I'm going to use some white and bring that white in there. And then allow that to blend. Okay, so now let's think about this section of the bear. So I'm going to take this gray, this dark gray color, and start putting that along the top of the mouth. Trying to leave some of that black so that we still have the dark of the mouth there. And let's bring some of the shadow up along this section of the nose. Trying to get a straight edge. Thinking about where the shadows are here. And then I'm going to pick up some white and start feathering some white in there. Let's bring it up along the bridge of the nose. A little bit more right here. And see if we can get that to blend together with that gray. And then there's a bit of a highlight along this bridge of the nose. You could add a little bit more white paint there, as well as around this bridge here. Okay, and then I'm going to add some of this bluish gray and just create more of a shadow. Just develop that shadow a little bit further with this bluish gray. Okay, I'm going to come back with another layer of this dark gray and feather that in. And then grab the white and then bring that white back in to get a nice smooth transition. Okay, sometimes the paint just dries a little bit too fast and you have to go back and do a second layer so that things blend more easily. Now let's look at this section here. I'm going to use some of the grayish, this tan and brown, and put that for a shadow for the eye in the back. I might add a little bit more gray to that. And then pick up that white and then bring that around. This section is just a little bit more highlighted. And then I'll take some gray for the ear in the back. And then a small amount of white on top of that. Okay, really easy, really light. Okay, so now let's do this section of the bear. So I'm gonna mix some of this gray and some white and some beige. And then I'm gonna come up with this nice neutral color and then bring it down this way. And then we'll take some white paint and bring that on top and just feather it down. Okay, and we'll do that same pattern right here. So I'm going to take this beige color, bring that down. I'm still using this one dome brush. And then put the white in next. And you can do really nice little light brush strokes, moving in the direction of the hair and the way that the fur is growing. Okay, as we get down into this section, I'm going to use a dark gray. Then I'm going to use some of this blue and then some white. And I want the white to turn light blue in this section. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of white and feather that in. Okay, so now let's look at the ears. So I'm going to use a really dark color. Let's use that dark brown. And I'm going to use a little bit of black as well. Make a shadow around this ear. Use some gray to go along the outside edges. I'm also going to use some of this light blue. And then I'll take that white and feather that white in around the ear. Okay, so again, nice and light and easy. Now I'm going to work on the fur textures, and to do that I'm going to grab a size 8 flat brush and I want to mix up a really dark shadow. So let's take some of the black and some of the burnt umber. I don't want to use too much black here, so be careful. And I'm going to start going in this pattern here with this brush. I want to create this fur texture. Just chunks of fur that are going out in this direction. And then after that, use some gray. And you can go on top of that shadow with some gray paint. Okay, and then I'm going to use this bluish gray and bring some of that down along this section here. Okay, and then let's pick up some beige and see if we can start feathering in the beige. I'm actually going to add a little more dark shadow right here. Then we'll come in with the beige. Okay, and then we'll add some white. See if you can add chunks of white on top of those shadows. And see if you can use that to create the effect of Nice chunky fur. Okay, I'm going to bring some this way. You might need to do more than one layer. Okay, and then let's look at this section here. I'm going to come back and do another shadow. And then I'm going to use this grayish blue color and bring some fur texture down this way. And then pick up that white and start bringing that white in on top of those shadows. Okay, and then I'm going to mix a light gray. So I'll take some of the darker gray with the white. And then let's bring just a dusting of fur down this way. Nice light gray. You can use the edge of the brush if you want to get some smaller strokes. And then pick up that white. And then see if you can put the white in there as well. You can go on top of some of that gray. Just really soft with the brush here. And then you can add some along this edge as well. Okay, so I'm going to come in with some of that dark gray, and I'm just going to bring back some of the shadows to help me get a little more definition. I'm going to bring this section to a bit of a darker shadow just to have a little bit more cohesion. And so we can get the shape of the body a little bit more precise. And then I'm going to take some white and bring some white out along this section here. Okay, and if you want to add more pieces of fur, you can go back and add more chunks. Let the brush do the work for you. Okay, but I think we will call this painting complete. So that is how you can paint a polar bear with acrylic paints. I hope you give this a try. Like and subscribe for more painting tutorials. If you want to dive deeper into painting with me, grab my free guide in the description below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!